seeing this year? That's the big question. Steve Berman, Bay Area sports guy, Oakland A's beat writer for The Athletic, joining us here. Steve, Jason Ross, how are you?
Good, Jason. Good to talk to you again.
You too. I know you're glad baseball is back. The 99-day lockout wasn't very fun, and I was really worried for a while, but that thing kind of turned quickly to get baseball back.
It did, and I was actually thinking no way, because we know what happened a week ago where everyone was staying up until like past midnight West Coast time, which meant on the East Coast they're staying up till like 3, and everyone was saying, the reporters were like, oh yeah, it's looking pretty good, I'm having a deal tonight or tomorrow morning, and then nothing happened. So I just figured that, maybe the season's going to get canceled till May, June, July, who knows. But we're going to have baseball. I actually talked to A's manager Mark Kotze a little bit on a Zoom before I came on with you. So it's nice to actually talk about baseball stuff as opposed to the collective competitive balance tax and arbitration and all that kind of stuff.
I know we'll get into the meat of the A's and Kotze and some of the changes, but just logistically, we've seen the new schedule. They'll start, I think the A's have 17 days in a row of games once it starts with opening day. But what's spring training going to look like? Have they figured that part out yet?
So, it seems like they're kind of figuring it out on the fly, because no one knew that the season was going to start in April until a couple days ago. So, Kotze seems like he's I guess they had an optional workout today where about a dozen players came. 4 guys through bullpen or side sessions, including A.J. Puck and Brent Honeywell, the guy they got in a trade with the Rays. But, it's going to be like a 3.5-week spring training instead of 6 weeks. So it's going to be difficult for all the teams to get their starting pitchers ready to go, say, 5-6 innings at the beginning of the season. So you're probably going to see a lot of bullpen games at the beginning of the year in April. And I'm not really sure if you're going to see as much of the young players getting as huge of an opportunity in spring training as you would in previous years, because before there were so many games they had to play, so they needed bodies. And now they actually are probably going to need the regulars, to whoever those end up being for the A's this year. You never know.
Yeah.
They need the regulars to actually get some time to get their swings and get their arms into shape. So, it's going to be definitely a different kind of chaotic spring training this year.
Steve Berman with us, A's beat writer from The Athletic. So when I remember going back in the offseason when it was granted permission for Bob Melvin to talk to the Padres, I thought, what are they doing? He's gone. And, in fact, he is. How big of a loss will Melvin be, and what do you expect from Kotze?
Yeah, that was sort of the tea leaves that I was reading when Melvin was allowed to interview and indeed took the job in San Diego. Kind of told me right there. Obviously for Melvin, it's great because he gets a little bit of security. He only had 1 year left on his deal with the A's, and the Padres gave him a 3-year contract. But also, it seemed like Melvin knew that there was going to be a rebuild coming. And so I don't think he had the stomach for that. He's been a manager for quite a long time. He's been in the postseason several times, and he wants to be able to be on a team that's contending for titles at this stage of his career. Kotze, on the other hand, was just looking for a shot. He's interviewed with a bunch of different teams over the last few years. The A's seemed like the team that he was destined to manage once Melvin left. Melvin just left a little early. It remains to be seen, how much they're going to miss with Melvin not there. Kotze said he's going to be a little bit more fiery in the dugout. I can see that. Melvin is always a guy who kind of rock back and forth. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while he'd blow up at an umpire, but generally speaking, he's just Mr. Even Keel. Kotze is a little bit more emotional, so that'll be different, and maybe that will kind of vibe better with a younger team, because I do think the A's are going to go through some sort of a makeover at some point. There's just too many rumors about them dealing away a lot of their best players for that smoke not to turn into fire at some point.
Yeah, they've already lost. Names that were important. I thought what Marte brought to them at the end was unique. That speed, that athletic ability. Mark Canha has been, Mr. A for a while. Those guys are gone, but are we going to see Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, Manaea, names like that everybody's been kind of comfortable with, that have built through this with this team? Do you think those guys or some of those guys are going to be gone?
At least some of them, yes. I don't know if there's enough time between now and the beginning of the season to trade away all these guys, because there's also Bassett is another guy who could get dealt, Trevino too. I think Olson's the guy who's probably going to be the first domino to fall, just because there's been the most talk about him. It's been reported by our guy, Ken Rosenthal, that the Braves were talking to the A's about Matt Olson before the lockout started. There's also some rumored interest in several of their players by reportedly the Rangers and Yankees as well. And the Rangers actually, even though they're the same division, they don't mind trading within the division. I don't know if they want to send Matt Olson in the division or Matt Chapman or, their best players, but, they dealt Chris Davis to Texas. They pulled off a trade the year before with the Angels to bring in Tom Stella. So if the deal is good, the A's will talk to anybody, and I'm sure they're talking to people just nonstop right now. I don't know if they could get all of those guys traded, though, and they don't really have to either. I mean, they're still going to be valuable in July at the trade deadline, too. But, yeah, I don't think there's a very good shot at them just rolling with the same core because, like you said, they had Marte. They traded for Gomes and Marte and Harrison and Chafin, and the team actually got worse. And it wasn't those guys' fault. Those guys are actually really good and kind of kept the team afloat when no one else besides Olsen was really doing anything. But they definitely didn't do as well as they hoped. So it just seems like they're going to pull back, spend less money, and also replenish their farm system. Their farm system is bottom third in the league, maybe even the worst.
Well, that's interesting. And obviously you can get a lot of returns if you move some of these guys. And this isn't foreign. This has been kind of an A's MO for a while. Steve, I wonder, though, with kind of the new deal, and they're kind of back in that revenue-sharing pot of things, would that slow some of this down at all, or is this still going to be the way the A's kind of do business for a while?
Well, I definitely kind of posited something when I wrote about what to expect after the lockout ends, that maybe it gives them a little less desperation if from on high, if John Fisher's telling them, we got to save money, we got to slash payroll. Maybe that gets lessened a little bit to the point where the A's don't feel desperate to make moves. Not that they really ever do, but it's not something to where, okay, if they're not really getting what they want for a guy like maybe Matt Chapman, who his value might not be as high now as it will be later in the year because he's coming off hip surgery last year and he was late on fastballs and wasn't quite the same hitter that we were expecting to see. Maybe that guy's a guy that you hold on to a little bit until his trade value goes up. I think Olsen is pretty much effectively gone at this point. There's just too much talk about that to happen. I don't know. I mean, the thing about it is, though, is that with this ownership group, well, not group, but just John Fisher, we don't actually know how he feels about anything. We just kind of assume because he doesn't talk to anybody. So my assumption is they're still going to, try to rebuild because this is kind of what they do. Like as you're saying, their MO. They kind of go through these 3 to 4 year windows where they contend. Then they kind of pull back. They don't tank. The A's never tank like some of the other teams. They always stay around 500, but they try to rebuild from within, get a new core of young guys who can rise up together and contend maybe 3 years down the line.
Yeah, and as I look at the division, obviously Houston with what they did a year ago and what they've been, Seattle actually beat the A's last year of all things, and they've got built through that farm system. Texas is just paid for talent, and the Angels have high level talent. You're right. I don't ever feel like the A's will fall apart, but I don't even know where they fit in that division right now.
I would say they probably fit in around third place at this point. And
okay.
The Astros, even though they're probably going to lose Correa, still are the class of the division until proven otherwise. And the Mariners looked really good to me last year. They seemed like they were actually a year early to be as good as they were. But you say they beat the A's. They beat the A's and beat the A's and beat the
A's.
They beat the A's a million times in a row, which is one of the things that really sunk the A's season. I mean, they really should have gone to the postseason last year. But the Mariners effectively kept them out. They just killed the A's all season. I think the Mariners are primed to be a 90-plus win team.
Wow.
The Angels just seem like a completely dysfunctional outfit. I mean, I know they have Trout and Ohtani, but they can't figure out how to get pitching. I mean, they draft nothing but pitchers recently, but, those guys aren't going to be ready yet. And the Rangers, I think, are a year away, too. They're spending big right now to get people to go into that ballpark, but generally their future, the way that they're going to really contend are the big prospects that they have, and those guys are probably still about a year or two down the line.
Speaking of ballparks, what's the latest? Where are we with the A's and trying to stay in Oakland?
So the A's had a pretty good, lockout as the ballpark is concerned. They not only, with the revenue sharing, going back into that was good news for Fisher, I guess, but they had the environmental impact report was passed by the Oakland City Council, and that was kind of a huge sort of bullseye on the calendar, and it was a moving bullseye because it kept getting delayed, and the A's would complain about it. But that has been passed. So what happens now, there's a lot of other stuff that has to go forward. There's planning commission stuff. There's going to be lawsuits that result from this. They actually have to approve the entire project. That probably wouldn't happen until late 2022, I would imagine, and maybe not even then. And then they're still talking Las Vegas. I mean, on one side of his mouth, Dave Cavill was saying, this is great. I think he told Casey Pratt of ABC7, yeah, we're at mile 20 of the marathon at this point after getting the EIR pass approved. But then, like, the next day, you're talking to Mick Akers of the Las Vegas Review newspaper and saying that, they're not happy with the term sheet that the city council put forth, and they're still looking at Vegas and looking at sites and trying to buy a site and still have interest there. I don't really know much of that is spin in order to apply leverage to Oakland. And also, MLB wants to know if Vegas is actually a viable relocation or expansion destination, too. So they might be kind of doing a little legwork for Manfred there. So we'll see. I've thought this, just kind of a long story short, I've thought this for several months now, just watching these city council meetings. The Oakland wants to get this done, and Libby Schaaf, the mayor, definitely wants to get this done, too. So if the A's want to get this done, it's going to happen. It's not going to be easy because nothing in California ever is. But if they want to stay, I think that there's a road to getting a stadium at Howard Terminal.
Yeah, and without knowing it, but if you project, Steve, and if it does end up there, and if they stay, I mean, I think to me there's still charm in the fan base that does go to Oakland games. I mean, the small group, but if that's there, that site and all the renderings, it looks amazing. What do you envision that being like, and what do you think the organization is run as? I mean, are they now going to be a big player if they get that nice, shiny stadium in the Howard Terminal?
That's the $1 million question or $1 billion question, I guess. It's, I don't know if we can be that confident that they're just going to turn into a big spender. There's a lot of teams that have nice stadiums. Think about Pittsburgh.
True.
And they've been, they have a beautiful stadium. They've been awful ever since Barry Bonds left, pretty much. I mean, they had that one year where they went to the wild card game and Brandon Crawford beat them. But other than that, they've been completely irrelevant. The Indians aren't really like a high revenue team that, and they're actually looking for a new stadium like 25 years later. So we'll see. The one thing that's kind of makes me pessimistic about them becoming a big player in terms of free agency and things is that the Athletic recently had a MLS poll, and it was, I guess, an anonymous poll of executives, and one of the questions was pretty much who has the worst ownership in terms of, does the least to help their team from ownership standpoint. And it was the Earthquakes. The Earthquakes are owned by John Fisher. John Fisher got a new stadium for the Earthquakes not that long ago. It didn't really change anything. So that kind of tells me right there, I don't really know if that's Fisher's MO. We'll see what happens. I mean, Avaya Stadium is a lot different than a $12 billion project with all kinds of real estate. And they're going to make money hand over fist if that thing actually gets built. So I would say that they're not going to ever be, like Red Sox West or anything like that. But I do think that maybe you'll see a little bit more of when they have players who are really good, a guy like Olsen, who any team would want in the majors, that they would actually extend that guy and try to bring some fan loyalty back with the team because fans are obviously just sick and tired of seeing their favorite players go away. That's the best I could hope for, though. I don't see them outspending the Giants for that matter, let alone, the Angels and the Astros and other teams in their division.
Well, it's. I'm just glad baseball is back, whatever version we're going to see here. But it's a full season, a lot of movement. I know is going to happen over the next few weeks. Steve, I know you'll be busy. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and we'll talk to you down the line.
No problem. Glad to actually talk baseball for once after a few months of not. So
for sure. You. Thank you. That's Steve Berman, Oakland A's beat writer from The Athletic. There's a lot of moving parts, as he said, not only with the stadium, but with the team. It's going to have a different look, managed by Kotze. And what will the team on the field look like on the diamond? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All right, lots of football news to jump back into. Again,